All right. Looks like we're recording. I think we've got everybody in from the waiting room, and Nikki will keep her eye in case somebody else joins. Welcome to the Evergreen Person Status and Discharge session. My name is Leslie Miska, and I'm the Information Services Manager at the Office of Aging and Disability Services, and I'll be leading the session today. Next slide, please, Nikki. During today's training session, we will cover the following topics: Introduction to Evergreen, the person status workflow, and the discharge form. Next slide, please, Nikki. Prior to this training, you should have watched the Evergreen microlearning videos. If you have not yet had a chance to watch them, don't worry, you still can. These brief videos are available out on our Evergreen project website at maine.gov/dhhs/EIS/Evergreen. The videos provide training for the following topics: search, which is an introduction to Evergreen and the search process and how to access the person, staff, locations, and organizations. Dashboards, which in Evergreen, there are two different dashboards. There's one for the user, yourself, called the My Dashboard, and then there's a dashboard for each person record within the system. And then there's a microlearning on the person record itself, which is where we capture all of the demographic data and personal information for each of the individuals that we provide services for. And then there's a health information microlearning training, which is where we capture all the diagnoses, allergies, treatments, medications, health insurance, and much, much more. And then there's a queries and notifications microlearning, those are two different tools that will help you manage your outstanding work or actions in the system. There's a training on progress notes. So for those of you that have access to create progress notes, that will tell you how you do that. And then there's an attachments training, and this will tell you how to upload important documents to the person record to supplement the information that's captured in the Evergreen forms. Please note that I won't be covering all of these topics during today's training. So you'll definitely want to make sure that you review those if you haven't already, or you can feel free to just do a refresher of them as well if you'd like. Next slide, please, Nikki. Participants have been added to this training session in listener mode, therefore your line is muted. We ask that you type questions into the Q&A using the Q&A icon from your Zoom window menu. And it looks like the image in the center of this screenshot where the red arrow is pointing to it. If you don't see that on your menu, it may be hidden under the more with the 3 dots of the ellipses, but definitely try to find that. And throughout the presentation, you can enter questions into that. And at the end of the slides, I will answer as many questions as we have time for, and I should have time to get to your questions at the end of today's presentation. And if for whatever reason I can't, we will certainly take those back and provide answers on our frequently asked questions page on our website. Next slide, please, Nikki. There are 2 different sections of the Evergreen system. It is a shared system with our adult protective services and guardianship conservatorship programs. So there's an adult protective services side of the system where APS reports are captured. And then there's the Evergreen side of the system, which is where we're going to focus our training today. And the Evergreen side of the system has the person record. And it's important to understand that there are these 2 distinct sections of the site, but they share a single person record. So because it is a shared system and there's a shared Evergreen record, person record, the adult protective services and public guardianship conservatorship staff will have access to view the person records and the data that's captured there, and they may even be able to edit that content as well. Next slide, please, Nikki. Some of the benefits of the Evergreen system include a robust help center and self-service features, including the ability to reset your own password. That's very exciting. So you don't need to reach out to my team anymore. You can reset your own password if you lose that. You also have the ability to upload those attachments to the person record, another awesome new feature that we don't have in EIS right now. So If there's additional supplemental documentation that you need to keep on record for the person, you can upload it to their person record. The ability to print forms as you see them on your screen. So I know in EIS we have the printer friendlies, and in Evergreen there are some printer friendly functions. In certain forms, you'll see a little print icon and you can use that. But anywhere in the system, you don't need a print icon. You can literally use Control and the P on your keyboard, and it will print the page that you're seeing. So it'll print the form. If you're on a form, it will print whatever it is that you're on. So that's a really cool feature. There's an enhanced person record with centralized data capture. So we're capturing things like history. We're using the Charting the Life Course, the 8 Charting the Life Course domains, and we're capturing history over time for that person under those domains in the history section. We're also capturing health information in a standardized way at the person record level. So diagnoses, medications, allergies, all that stuff, so that it can be captured in one place and maintained in one place where everybody has access to that needs access to that. And then there's the ability for person records to be linked with and receive automatic updates from the MIMS system. So we will, when creating new person records in Evergreen, we will search to see if that record exists in Evergreen first so that we're not duplicating it. If it doesn't, then it will then search the MIMS member record data. And if it finds a match there, then we can draw we can create that link and draw in some of the pertinent information for that person and create an Evergreen record off of that. And then once it's linked up, it will continue to receive updates from claims that come in against that member record. So we'll get updated diagnoses, medications, we'll get medical professional contacts, and we'll even get program and financial classification information, and some other pieces of data from MIMS. And even if that member doesn't exist in MIMS at the time that we create the person in Evergreen, if a member comes across in the future that has exact match to some critical primary pieces of information, the system will automatically link it to MIMS so that it will start receiving those updates. We also have the display of common data within forms rather than having to recapture that. So, for example, because we're capturing diagnoses at the person record level, because we're capturing all the address information there, their guardianship status, things like that, when you create forms in Evergreen, you won't have to recapture things like that. You won't have to recapture the date of birth. You won't have to recapture their case manager their assigned case manager. The system will just automatically display that information for you when you create that form. There's also standardized data capture. So fields that are required in order to complete a form will have red asterisks. If they're required, if they're required to save it in an in-progress status, they'll have red asterisks. If it's required to submit or complete the form, they'll have a yellow bar in the field indicating that. There's field level validations. So we're going to get dates in date fields instead of text. And if it's a numeric only field, it will only allow you to enter numbers rather than both alpha characters and numeric characters. And there are also like form workflows and business rules built into the forms so that we're ensuring that we're capturing data in a consistent way for better reporting. And the application is web-based, the same way that EIS is web-based, but it's compatible with both your laptop or PC as well as tablet. It will size down and rearrange the screen so that it fits on something as small as a tablet. It also could size down and be used on a cell phone, depending on the size of your cell phone, but we can't promise that it will work perfectly with all smartphone devices. So we only guarantee it down to a tablet size. Next slide, please, Nikki. My dashboard is the first page that a staff member or user, yourself, will see when you log in. The My Dashboard showcases a primary navigation tool bar at the top, the white primary navigation or persistent navigation that has your search bar in it. So there's the Evergreen logo and then your little search bar. You can keyword search here, or there's a couple of other icons to the right of the search bar for your search history or an advanced search, so you can narrow those results. That's how you're going to navigate to your person records for the most part, unless you're explicitly assigned like a case manager or care coordinator or guardian rep, then you might navigate through your caseload. Your dashboard tiles are below this persistent navigation, and your dashboard tiles will be based on your user role. So for this example, I've shown you what like a case manager or a care coordinator would see. If you are not a case manager or a care coordinator, you might not see all of these tiles. But everybody in the system will have the tile that's in the upper left, the orange tile. That's the announcements tile, and that's managed by our vendor, FEI Systems. And they'll put things in there like upcoming outage. Like if we have some scheduled maintenance and we know the system is going to be down for some scheduled maintenance or something like that, there might be a notice on there about that. There might be notices on there about holidays or office closures, things like that. But these are alerts that all system users system-wide should be receiving and seeing. The tile below that is called the My Notes tile. This is a feature in Evergreen that's similar to like sticky notes or Notepad, if you've ever used those on your laptop, smartphone, tablet. It allows you to create a note, like a quick note with just a title and some text. And then it saves that against your profile, your staff profile. And if your user role does allow you to create progress notes, then you can navigate to those and promote those up to become a progress note against a person's record if, in fact, you have that access and need to do that. You can just create notes that don't get promoted to progress note, and they're just for yourself, like little reminders and things like that as well, and they'll just stay under your profile. The tile in the center at the top is the caseload tile. This is a list of person records that you are actively assigned to. This tile will only show up for people that truly have explicit relationships, like case managers, care coordinators, guardianship representatives. And this is how likely those individuals will navigate to their person records. You can use little search, or you can scroll and you can just click on the person that you want to navigate to. All other users will probably navigate using the person search or from notifications or queries or something like that. And then the tile right below that is called the messages tile, or the messages inbox, in the center at the bottom. And that is a feature similar to email. However, it's contained within the Evergreen application. So rather than communicating about the persons that you're serving with other users of the system or other people that are supporting that person through email, you should and can use this messages inbox to do that communication. And then all that content is stored in the system as well. So all system users are have messages as well. And so you can search for another system user. So if you're, a provider and you need to communicate with the assigned case manager, you can search for the assigned case manager and send them a message from within here in Evergreen. And then the last tile on the far right is the My Tasks tile. This is a feature that's similar to Outlook Tasks. If you've ever used Outlook Tasks, you can create tasks for yourself, reminders of things that you need to do, tasks that you need to do within the system. And also your supervisor could assign tasks to you. So that's another cool new feature, ways for you to just keep track of the things that you need to keep track of. Next slide, please, Nikki. Before we review the discharge form and the process related to that, I'd like to take a look at the common or happy path person status workflows. Next slide, please, Nikki. So again, there's a lot of variations in the way that a person's status might change, but I'm just going to go through the happy path, or the most common path of how a developmental disabilities person and a brain injury person might flow through the Evergreen system. So starting with the developmental disabilities, the row that you're seeing at the top, the person is referred, and at this time, they may or may not exist in the system. They likely don't unless they're receiving, unless they were added there by the Adult Protective Services staff. Once they're, so because they don't exist in the system, their status in their person banner, their person record banner, is going to show two little dashes, meaning they don't have a person status yet. Well, actually, they don't even have a person record, so they don't have a status at all because they don't have a person record at this point. So what happens when they get referred is our developmental disabilities intake and eligibility staff or the admin staff that receives the call will create a contact form, and they'll capture the information about the referral. Once the consent is received from the person or their guardian to complete the developmental disabilities intake and eligibility assessment, then a person record will be created by the DD intake and eligibility staff. That's when their status will show as two dashes, because at that point, they literally just have a person record and they don't have another status yet. Right after that, the intake and eligibility staff will create a DD eligibility assessment under that person record. This will change their status to DD intake status. So while they're going through the intake and eligibility process, they'll have a status of DD intake on their person banner. Then once their eligibility assessment has been completed, their assessment will be set to either DD eligible or DD ineligible based on the assessment. If they are deemed eligible for developmental disability services, their status will update to DD eligible. If they were determined ineligible, they did not meet the criteria for developmental disability services, their person's status will update to reflect DD ineligible. I'm going to go with the happy path of they were found eligible. They were referred and they were found eligible. So we're going to keep going down that trajectory. So after they've been found DD eligible, then they'll be sent their letter letting them know that they're DD eligible and that they can choose to accept case management services. Once the person accepts their case management services, then a case management acceptance form will be created in the system for them. And this will allow the community case management liaison team to create the case manager or care, in this case, case manager assignment, explicit assignment. So your location, your case management agency location will be assigned. And if the case manager is known at that time, that will be assigned. If not, then the case manager association agency will make the case manager assignment. At the time that the assignment gets made, then the person's status will update to reflect Section 13. They'll now be receiving targeted case management Section 13. The case manager will then create an initial comprehensive assessment and an initial person-centered plan. Likely, the person is wanting to apply for another waiver. So again, I'm going to go with that happy path that they're looking to apply for Section 21 or 29. So when that initial person-centered plan is created, the case manager is likely going to put some proposed waiver services in that plan for either Section 21 or 29. And then they're going to submit an application packet. And they're going to attach that PCP to the application packet. And our waiver managers will receive that packet in the system and they'll review that packet. They'll review the comprehensive assessment, the PCP, and they will determine whether that person is medically eligible or not medically eligible to receive the service that they've applied for. I'm going to go with the happy path again. They were determined medically eligible. So they will now be added to the program management module in the system. At this point, they will be added to the wait list. And once a slot becomes available, they'll be made an offer. This whole time, their person status is still going to say Section 13 because they're still on Section 13. And then once they're made an offer and they accept that offer, then the case manager will go back in and revise their comprehensive assessment and their person-centered plan, and they'll change the person-centered plan to whichever section of program policy that they've accepted and they're now going to be classified on. Once that comprehensive assessment and PCP have been revised to the appropriate program, a classification packet will be created by the case manager. This classification packet will attach the revised comprehensive assessment and PCP. And now our resource coordinators will receive that classification packet, and they will go ahead and enter that classification directly into the MIMS system, the way that they currently do. That evening, every evening, but that evening after the classification has been entered into MIMS, that program classification will flow back into Evergreen. And because that person record is linked to the MIMS member record, the classification will now show up in their person record, and it will automatically change their status to whichever section of program they're on, 21 or 29. So their person status will show up as 21 or 29. They will stay this way as long as their plans are updated timely and their classifications get entered timely into the system, into MIMS system, and then flowing back. Until which point they choose to either terminate services voluntarily, or because they just don't want to receive them anymore, or they move out of state, or they pass away and now they're deceased. So at which point they're I'm going to go with the deceased, because most people do stay on services, I think, until they pass away. So once the person passes away, then when the date of death gets added to their person record, their status will show as deceased. If for some reason they end classification, like they are, they're not deceased and they choose to just end services voluntarily, there's a process that will occur during discharge, which we'll talk a little bit about, that will kind of work its way back through these statuses. So, initially their section 21 will go away because all their PAs will be zeroed out, their classification will be ended. So then it will set back to 13. And then once their case manager assignment is ended, it will set back to DD eligible, and they'll stay in the system as DD eligible in case they ever decide to come back into services. So that's the kind of happy path for developmental disabilities. For brain injury, it's similar, but a little bit different. So with brain injury clients or members, the person will be referred again, or they'll come to us themselves, and they will not exist in the system unless they've previously received some other services. So they won't have a person record at that point. And then the brain injury process is that they will get referred to Maximus for their assessments. And then the outcomes and the scores from their assessment through Maximus will be entered into Assessment Pro. And the brain injury staff will receive that information in Assessment Pro. And then they will, either the BI waiver manager or the BI case coordinator will go into Evergreen at that time, if they're BI eligible, and they will create the person record, and then they will create a level of care form rather than a comprehensive assessment. The brain injury program uses the level of care form. They'll create that level of care form. They'll put all of the assessment scores into that, and then they will create a brain injury, a BI application packet. Once that has been done, the packet has been created, the status will update to BI intake at that point. Then once an offer is made to that person and the person accepts, the PCP will be created, the classification packet will be created, and the care coordinator will be assigned. And then this is where after the care coordinator is assigned, then the classification will get entered into MIMS. And once that flows back into Evergreen that night, then we'll see section 18, or if they're receiving 102 services, if that's what program they're classified on, then the 102. And then again, it works its way backwards the same way. If their classification ends in MIMS, they would go from Section 18 back to just BI eligible. And then if the person passes away and the date of death is added, then their person status will update to deceased. Next slide, please, Nikki. So after having gone through that sort of path of how all the statuses work, we're going to get to the point of discharge. So a discharge form should be completed whenever a person is no longer receiving services from us. So again, there's a variety of reasons there. It could be that they've passed away. It could be that they chose to voluntarily terminate services. It could be that they're moving out of state. There's a variety of reasons. Next slide, please, Nikki. To create the discharge form, the user should navigate to the person's record, click on the Forms and Plans icon in that green primary navigation menu on the left-hand side of the screen. I circled that icon in red, and the background is white because I was clicked in when I took the screenshot. This is going to take you to the All Forms list page, which is what you're seeing sort of grayed out in the background. And in the upper left-hand corner of that screen, you'll see a plus new form button. You'll click this, which will open the modal that you're seeing in the center of the screen here. This is the create new form modal. And you will select the form discharge under the category of case, care plans, and forms. And then you'll move to step 2 using the next button. Next slide, please, Nikki. In step 2, you'll select the program that's being terminated. So in this case, in my example, I selected DD, developmental disabilities. There's also selections for brain injury or BI, ORC, which isn't going to be in the system yet, and adult protective services. So if we needed to discharge an adult protective services person. And then you'll provide a date of discharge. And then you'll select your reason for discharge. So the full list of reasons is deceased, moved out of state and chose to terminate services, chose to end services, no longer chooses to receive Evergreen managed services. So that's the voluntary termination. Department involuntarily ends services / termination due to no contact. And that can be for any of the programs, BI, ORC, DD, and then termination of guardianship conservatorship and does not receive Evergreen managed services. And then after that choice is made, and in this screenshot, I selected chose to end services, no longer chooses to receive Evergreen managed services. So it's like a voluntary termination. And then after that is a comment field. That's an optional field, but you can add any additional comments related to the discharge that might be necessary to be captured. And there is some, I didn't type any comment in here, so you could see the ghost guiding text that is populated there for you and is also available under the light bulb icon, information icon. So this just gives you some idea of what types of content you might want to add in that comment. And then you would hit save. Next slide, please, Nikki. Upon creating the form, the system will navigate you right into the discharge form. And like the other Evergreen forms, the status is going to be in progress. The difference here, though, is that unlike other forms, the completion requirements on the discharge form are going to show as green, and that green check marks. And that's because you answered all the questions that you needed to answer for this form already in the create modal. However, you should not immediately set this form to complete. You should review the discharge information, which came from your create modal, which I've circled in that first section that I had expanded there. And then you should read the discharge checklist and follow the steps that are in the checklist before setting your discharge form to complete. So the discharge checklist will be customized based on the reason that you selected for the discharge. So I'm seeing the discharge checklist for somebody that chose to end services. but there'll be a different one for somebody who passed away, and if you chose deceased, or they move out of state, or we involuntarily terminate them. So in this example, for a voluntary termination, they chose to end their services. The system is giving me the following checklist. Verify the address is updated in the person profile. We want to always make sure that we have a current address when we terminate services for somebody in case we need to mail stuff. Document and upload a discharge summary in the attachments section under discharge documents. Obtain signatures on the voluntary termination of waiver services document and upload in the attachments section under discharge documents. If a form is in progress, close the form with a reason of member declined, if applicable. Not all forms will require that, and document appropriate information. But most importantly, reversion or revise the PCP as a change type with a change reason of change in service support. And this message doesn't say that right now, but also select change in service implementation plan. I selected both in my screenshot. You'll see that in a minute. And then zero out and end date all waiver services in the My Life Planning section. End date the non-waiver and natural support services accordingly, and fill out the change in waiver service section for the resource coordinators, and then unassign all waiver providers. Next slide, please, Nikki. The next step in the discharge process is to complete those actions that I just read. So again, it will be customized for your reason, and we'll go through the ones for this reason on this demo. So I'm going to steal the screen share from Nikki here, and I'm going to log in and show you a few of the first steps from the checklist. I'm going to try. My windows are giving me some trouble. I'm in a test environment, so sometimes it's a little slow and there could be some hiccups, but bear with me. And I am logging in as a super user here, just for ease of use for me for this demo. So there is going to be a lot more content and navigation than a typical user would see. Ooh. That's more results than I wanted. So I've navigated to the person record of Leslie's status. And from here, I'm going to verify the address, which is under the record. So I don't have an address here. I don't have a current address for this person. So I'm not going to take time on this demo, but what I would do is add an address, fill out these, and make sure that I have a current address. The next item that I needed to do for my checklist was upload 2 attachments. One was the discharge summary, and one was the voluntary termination of waiver services. So I'm going to go to the attachments icon. I'm going to do new attachment. I'm going to find those attachments from my device. So I'll do this discharge summary attachment first. And I'm to put them under the discharge documents category. And I'm going to call this discharge summary. And it has an effective date range of today, and I can leave the end date open. And now you can see that that attachment has been added here right to the top of my list. And I have to do a second attachment according to my checklist. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that as well. Voluntary termination of waiver. And again, you would have gotten these signed and all that. And then I'm going to call this voluntary termination of waiver. If I can type. And then you'll see that one showed up there. So now I'm going to stop sharing and give the slides back to Nikki, and then we'll come back and do another demo after we get through a few more slides here. Excellent. So the next item on my checklist was to revise the PCP. So to revise the PCP, you will need to click on the Forms and Plans icon, and this will take you to the All Forms list page. And then you'll have to actually use the little filter icon, that upside down pyramid or hamburger icon in the upper right-hand corner, to go to the Custom PCP Forms list page. So that's where I was when I took this screenshot, and you can tell because up in the center left where I circled, it says person-centered plan. I'm on the person-centered plan list page. It's also right above my table. It says person-centered plan. And then you'd find the plan that you need to revise, the active plan that you need to revise. And there may also be some in-progress PCPs depending on what happened. So you'll also want to close out any in-progress PCPs as well. But most definitively, you want to go to this active one. It will say active, yes. It should be close to the top of the list of PCPs for them. And you'll click on the little ellipses and you'll choose the revise option that I've circled there. Next slide, please, Nikki. The system will provide the revise pop-up modal. From here, you should choose the PCP type of change. Your checklist told you to choose the PCP type of change. The checklist told you to choose the change reason of change in service support. And I'm also telling you right now, and we'll get that checklist updated, to also select change in service implementation plan. So you'll select those two, and then you'll hit save. Next slide, please, Nikki. Upon saving, the system will bring you into the PCP where you can navigate directly to the My Life Planning Services and Support section. Please note that you will need to click the edit toggle in the upper left-hand corner in order to modify any of the data. I'd actually already modified the data when I took these screenshots, so apologies that it doesn't look exactly the way it would when you're editing. But you would click the little edit mode in the upper left, the little bubble in the middle would be orange, and you'd see some page navigation items at the bottom. And then when you hovered over, you'd be able to get the edit pencil. But you can use your quick scroll. You can go right to this My Life Planning Services and Support section. And then you want to look for all of your services that need to be zeroed out, specifically your waiver services. If there are natural supports, community support services that you want to end or need to zero out, you can do that as well. But particularly your waiver services need to be zeroed out. So you'll find each one, you'll open each one up, and you'll just go to the section that I've circled here, the hours per week or the invoice amount or whatever, wherever you captured the units for that service, and you want to set it to 0 and then save it. Next slide, please, Nikki. Once all of the services have been zeroed out, you should then navigate to the change in waiver service section, which I've circled over there. It's also under the My Life Planning. You want to go to that change in waiver services section. And you're going to want to answer yes to the question, are there any changes to waiver services that impact service authorizations? Because you've just zeroed them all out, and the resource coordinators need to know, or the care monitors need to know, that they should end these PAs. So you'll say yes, and then in that, these are the changes to waiver services. You can, I type zeroed waiver services out, but you can say something like, are there any change, the person has terminated services, please end all PAs, or something along those lines. Then once you've done that, you can use the status dropdown to submit the plan for state review. So that's the next status in the workflow, and that will trigger a notification to the resource coordinators. And then they'll receive that notification, and then they'll go ahead and zero out the PAs for you. And then, next slide, please, Nikki. And then after you've zeroed the waiver services and you've updated the change in waiver services question and you've submitted it for state review, now you can use the status dropdown again and you can choose the option of close. This will allow you to close the PCP. So the system's going to present the box that you see in the middle here, and you'll select your reason. And again, you'll choose member withdrew because this was voluntary termination. If they had passed away, you'd use deceased. And then the other choices in here when you close are created an error or admin edits, but you'll want to do member withdrew. And then you'll provide any pertinent closure comments if you want, it's optional. And then you'll click continue to complete the PCP closure. This will truly close this PCP. So make sure that you're certain and you want to close before you do that. Once you close it, the system will then auto close all of the associated service implementation plans that were attached to this PCP. They'll be closed with a reason of PCP closed and a comment of the PCP that this service implementation plan was linked to has been closed. That will trigger a notification to those waiver providers that the PCP was closed and their service implementation was closed. And it will also trigger notifications to the DD waiver. Closing the PCP will trigger notifications to the DD waiver manager or BI waiver manager that they should terminate the program classification. You've already triggered a notification to the resource coordinators about their prior authorizations, but this will also, closing the PCP will trigger a second notification to them that prior authorizations need to be terminated. And then it will also trigger a notification to the community case management liaisons and BI care coordinators to let them know that case management assignments will need to be ended. I'm going to steal the screen share back from Nikki and just show you a couple of more pieces here. So the community case managers will end the case management location assignment, but the case manager assignment may be ended by the case management agency before the community case manager assignment is ended. So assignments are located under the person navigation, primary navigation, under assignments. There's a tab for location assignments and for staff assignments. So I just wanted to show you here, you can see on this person that I have a section 13 status. That's because I have an active case manager assignment. So you can see there's an active location assignment here and there's an active case manager assignment. So I'm going to inactivate this case manager assignment. I'm going to try. And now you can see, because there's no active case manager assignment, my status automatically reset back to DD eligible. So as I was mentioning when we went through the workflow status, that's how the system will determine whether they go from DD eligible to case manager. The other thing I wanted to show you, so once the case manager is unassigned, then the community case management liaison will then go in after everything's done. The agency doesn't need to do anything else on the person record, and then they will go ahead and open up this location assignment and inactivate that location assignment. I'm going to leave it on just for purposes here because I want to use this again. But then you also, what I wanted to show, separate from how the location assignments will happen after all this, is if the person was deceased. So we went through the voluntary termination path, but if the person was deceased, one of the checklist items is to ensure that their date of death is added. So that is found under the person record, under the personal information card. It's the very first card or section. So you don't necessarily need to open your quick scroll. You'll come right to it. And case managers and care coordinators have access to edit this section. So you'll just hover your pencil. So you can see this one has like a couple of pencils. This is an interesting section in Evergreen. Most sections just have one pencil icon for the whole thing that's inside of this border, orange border. But this section or card has multiple. So you actually need to get right near the date of death itself, and it'll get another pencil icon, and it will pop up just a window for date of death. And then you would enter the date of death here. And if you do that, it will save, and then it will change your status to, I'll go ahead and do it just so you can see. Oh, see, I should always use the date picker. See, validation, I didn't use the right format. I missed my 0 in there. So as soon as I entered my date of death and saved it, my status updated to deceased. So this person's record will now show deceased. I'm going to stop sharing and give the slides back to Nikki. So that concludes the person status and discharge form presentation. Next steps are definitely to get practicing, familiarizing yourself with the system. We do need to send you out your login credentials and your assigned person record in order to be able to access that system. And we are working on that. It's a little bit of a coordinated effort with 2,700 users. So we will definitely try to get those out by the end of next week. And in the meantime, visit our project website, maine.gov/DHHS/EIS/Evergreen, rewatch the informational webinars, watch or rewatch the microlearning videos. We're going to be posting the recorded training sessions that we're going to be doing ongoing that started this week. We'll probably be posting those weekly. So hopefully at the end of each week or the beginning of the following week, you'll start seeing some of these recorded trainings posted out there along with the PowerPoint slides from all of these. You can start reading through the frequently asked questions that are out there. We'll be updating those questions as well from all of these sessions. So there's lots of material to help start getting yourself familiar with the system. And then once you get your training environment and assigned person, get in there and play around as much as possible. For those of you that have access to create progress notes or reportable events, definitely be working towards tying up loose ends and getting those into completed state. For those of you that work on PCPs and service implementation plans, make sure that you're following the guidelines from within the September communication about making sure that they are set to the right statuses so that they migrate over successfully. Those will migrate in progress, person-centered plans and service implementation plans if they're not in a final state. And then there are a couple of question and answer sessions that are scheduled for the end of January. So, the end of the final week leading into our deploy. So it's the middle of January. Sign up for one of those, and that way you can bring any questions that you have after you've listened to all of your training sessions and or been playing around in the training environment of the sandbox environment. And at any time, please feel free to email questions to us at evergreen.dhhs@maine.gov. Next slide, please, Nikki. So we have reached the questions portion. We do have 11 minutes left here together. I do have 13 questions in the Q&A, so I'll try to get through all of those. If anybody has any additional questions, please feel free to enter those into the Q&A. If we run out of time, we'll certainly make sure that we get responses to the questions out on our frequently asked questions page. Carrie asks, will Evergreen tell us if the client has lost their main care? Yes. So in addition to program classification, when the record gets linked to the MIMS member record, we will also receive financial eligibility information. So you will be able to tell if they have active financial eligibility as well as active program classifications. And that information is found in the person record under eligibilities, I think is the title of the section that it's in, but you can also find that right in the person's summary. So if you navigate to the person record and you click on the person's summary icon, that will give you all of the active financial and program classifications along with some other critical information. Someone else asks, will this replace the decline of waiver form? I'm not entirely sure what the decline of waiver form is, so I'll have to get back to you on that. There is a separate form called the choice form that's in the system. I don't I'm quite certain that this doesn't replace the decline of waiver form, but that may be a form that needs to get added to the discharge as part of the discharge process. So we'll try to get back to you on that one. Christina asks, discharge, in quotes, discharge from Evergreen actually means discharge from waiver services. In this scenario, she's discharging from waiver services. Yeah, it is a little confusing, but some person records in Evergreen were never receiving waiver services. They might have only been in here for like adult protective services reasons, or they may have never gotten on waiver. They might have come in and just done targeted case management, or just gone through the referral process, and we might want to discharge them. So we said Evergreen rather than waiver, but in the scenario that I was giving the example of, it was somebody that was on waiver, and so it did mean Evergreen developmental disabilities waiver services. Pam asks, are children's case managers going to have access to Evergreen? Children's case managers complete the waiver applications for youth between 18 and 20. Great question, Pam. Yes, we are going to strongly encourage children's case managers to get Evergreen access, get an account, and be able to fill out these forms on their own. That said, we cannot force them to do that. We cannot make them use the system. So they will still have the option to fill those out on paper the way that they sometimes do currently with EIS, and will use the same process by which somebody within the Office of Aging and Disability will upload those paper attachments to those application packets rather than having the forms filled out directly in the system. But that is a bummer, because it would be a lot nicer to have the form in there for easy revision and, you know, moving things along. And also other forms do get tied to the person-centered plan, like service implementation plans, HCBS rights modification addendums. So it's much nicer if that content is filled out in the system rather than uploaded as attachments. Carrie asks, will all of these discharge steps be outlined in the manual? Great question, Carrie. These steps will not be in the Evergreen user guide itself. However, we do have a document that has all of these different checklists, and we will make that document available to you so that you can see the different types of discharge and all of the checklists. However, when you go and create the form in the system, but depending on your reason, your checklist will be presented to you. So it will be right in the form in that second section that I showed you. And we're also going to post this training session and these PowerPoints. So these will be materials that you can always refer back to as well if you need to. Someone else asks, do we still have to go fill out a form and send to the resource coordinator and services, or do we just note it under the DC section, discharge section? Yeah, you will no longer need to fill out a form and send to the resource coordinators, because you are revising the PCP and zeroing out the waiver services, and you're adding that note in the PCP itself and saying that there's a change in waiver services and that the person is terminating services. Please end the PAs. That is your notice to them now, and the system will automatically notify them, and they'll know, and they'll zero them out. So you don't have to do a separate form anymore. Leslie asks, are there standard names the case manager should use when attaching forms, i.e. discharge forms? Great question. So obviously the form itself will be saved to your device. You're going to go search for that form, and whatever you named the form when you saved it, that's going to show up when you attach it as the name of the file. And then you have that title for your attachment. That's where you might want to give some short description of what that document is. So in this case, because I was uploading a discharge summary, I just gave it a title of discharge summary. That's probably appropriate. If you want to give it a little bit more information, you can. I would certainly keep those to be, relatively short titles, because that's how your attachments, it's going to show up in that list page. And if they're really long, it might make that kind of clunky, but yeah, there's no like prescribed naming convention per se, but I would just give it some sort of a short description that matches what the document is, what type of document it is that you're uploading there. Leslie also asks, if closing was done in error, how is that corrected? Great question, Leslie. So several roles do have the ability to close things. Case managers and care coordinators are one of those roles that has the ability to close certain forms. You do want to be very careful about closing forms because you yourself don't have the ability to reverse that. The ODES administrator, my team, does have the ability to reopen things, but certain forms, it becomes pretty tricky, and we might even have to get the vendor involved. So when you click close from the status bar, it will create that pop-up modal. It will say close at the top, and it will ask some questions, and then it will ask you again, are you sure you want to close this? So the system there shouldn't be accidental closures. Again, there's a couple of different steps that will happen there to kind of cue you in, like make sure you know that you want to close. But if again, something does get closed because you thought that it needed to be closed, and then you found out, oh goodness, nope, it shouldn't have been closed, then you'd reach out to my team. The way that you currently do, we have the EIS support box. We're going to have an Evergreen support box for you too. So there'll be information coming about that in January. We're going to give you a whole post-deploy support plan and how you can get support around different things. But you would definitely reach out to my team, and then someone would be able to help you try to get that reopened. Someone else asks, a case manager can stay on even though the waiver is terminated, correct? So yeah, there's probably some things that need to also be completed after the discharge form and after, the classification ends. So those steps happen separately. So you'll complete the discharge form. You'll submit the PCP, you'll revise the PCP, submit that to resource coordinators or care monitors to zero out the PAs, and then you may need to still do some person cleanup and that kind of thing. You'll do whatever it is that you need before the case manager assignment is terminated, and then the case management agency assignment is ultimately terminated. Someone else asks, does the case manager supervisor complete the step to set the status to inactive, or can the case manager do this? I think that's related to either the piece, probably the assignments, because I think that's where I did inactive. So for assignments, those can only be done by supervisors within the case manager agency. So supervisors within the case management agency or care coordination agency will be able to assign and unassign case managers the way that you currently do in the way that they currently do in EIS, so that they can manage their own caseloads and make sure that they have the right people assigned to the right persons that their agency is serving. However, the location assignment has to be done by our community case management liaison team, just the same way that it currently is. Someone else asks, will people be able to attach files from their computers, or just what is in Evergreen? Yeah, no, the attachments, the attaching stuff to the person record is coming from your device. So your laptop, your PCP, you're gonna, if you're uploading an attachment to the person record or within a form, you're going to be navigating your own files. So it'll be whatever your files are on your machine, or shared drive files that you have at your agency or organization. That's where you're going to be searching for the documents that you're going to be uploading and attaching into the system. Someone else asks, will assessments that are in EIS migrate to Evergreen? Great question. Yes. We are migrating the data that's in EIS into Evergreen. 5 years worth of data will be available for display, view, search, whatever you need to do with it. Everything older than 5 years is going to be migrated just into our data warehouse for storage reasons, and just we have lots of data. However, if you need access to any of that data that's more than 5 years old for whatever reason, you will have, again, as part of that post-deploy support plan, we'll be telling you how you can make a data request, and we'll provide that data to you so that you have access to that. Some forms will migrate in closed, like progress notes, reportable events, but some forms will migrate in whatever status they're in, like PCPs, SIPs. If they're in progress, they'll migrate in the status that they're in at the time of the migration. There are a couple of other questions here queued up, and we have reached the 5:01 time slot, so I do want to be respectful of everybody's time. We will definitely take these questions that I didn't get to. There's one from Janet and several from Karen, and we'll make sure that if these answers don't already exist in our frequently asked questions, that we get those out there for you. But for Janet, you were asking about the sandbox. You'll get an email from us, and it will give you the URL to that and the access to that. And Karen, I apologize that we ran out of time, but we will certainly get to all of your questions separately. And I want to thank everybody for joining me at the end of the day on a Wednesday, and hope that you found this beneficial, and hope to see you at future trainings, and looking forward to supporting you in the new system. Have a great night. Thank you.